So without further ado, here we go. And we are actually going to get started. I'm really excited this morning because I get to introduce you all to two new teammates at Mass Creative. So we've been busy here at Mass Creative, and there's two new staff members. Our Director of Organizing, L Cadet. L, do you want to just say hey real quick? And then
Hi, good morning, everyone. I'm so excited to see everybody joining in this morning. Emily knows like I'm very jittery right now because I'm just so excited to see all your beautiful faces on this Zoom right now. So welcome and good morning.
Great.
I'm gonna have the opportunity to say more a little later.
And then we also have our Director of External Relations, Kelsey Rode. Kelsey, do you want to say hey?
Hi, good morning, everyone. It's nice to see you all here, and I'm looking forward to seeing you all in your home districts eventually.
Awesome. So Team Mass Creative, Kelsey, Richland, and I, and hopefully a soon to be hired data development manager. Some of you may have seen that job description. We have been cooking up a lot of things, and it's been a super busy beginning of 2023. And so we're going to talk about a lot of the things that we're going to be focusing on and working on. And we're also, we're going to try some new things this year, this legislative session, which is a 2-year session. We all as a community, as an advocacy network, had to work really hard over the last 3 years to make sure that decision makers understood not only the value and the need and the role that arts and culture and artists and creatives play in their communities, but also our need in the midst of a global pandemic and an economic, significant economic impact of that global pandemic on our sector. And so, we did a lot of work, which I'm really excited about. And we've got some more to do together, but we can sort of approach it in a little bit of a different way, right? Because we're not necessarily in immediate crisis. And so we're going to talk to you today about a couple of different parts of this work and ways that you can get involved and things that we have kind of cooking that we can preview for you. So I'm going to stop talking and turn it over to Richland, who's going to talk to you about the advocacy work.
Hi, good morning again, everyone. Thank you all so much for joining us this morning. As Emily said, my name is L Cadet. My pronouns are she, her, hers. I am a Boston resident and a diehard, strong Celtic and Bostonian. If I haven't had the opportunity to meet some of you yet, I cannot wait to talk to you all. A little bit about me. I am a proud state school graduate of Salem State University. I graduated from Salem State in 2021 with a dual degree in political science and criminal justice. Post-graduation, I dodged into political organizing as the deputy campaign manager for now Senator Liz Miranda, who is serving the proud 2nd Suffolk District in Boston. And post my time with Senator Liz Miranda, I also joined the Fair Share Amendment in New Bedford as the regional organizing director to help out with gaining support for the Fair Share to ensure that we have a more equitable Commonwealth for everyone in terms of the tax cut. Those are two of my previous campaigns that I'm very proud of. And after my time on the campaign trail, I joined Mass Creative as the organizing director, knowing that the mission of the organization and what we hope to bring to light for the sector is the type of work that I wanted to continue to do, and this type of work that helps me wake up in the morning and feel like there's I can do it. And there are so many people in the sector who have so much more, who have a voice, who just need a safe platform to advocate for themselves, which is why I'm super excited to be directing Mass Creative as the organizing director. in this capacity, there are a few things that I'm hoping to bring to Mass Creative. A lot of people don't quite know where the intersection of political organizing and the creative sector meet, and I'm just super excited to be the to close that gap for everyone. In this capacity, I am hoping to have the opportunity to teach more people in this sector how to advocate for yourselves and how to create a platform for not just your art to be valued, but for your voice to be valued. There are a lot of issues within the community that is impacting us, from housing to funding to education. All of these things directly impact who we are as members of the creative sector as well, and not just like voting members, but like as people and individuals and artists. We often talk about at Mass Creative how the creative sector has such a beautiful economic impact for the Commonwealth, but oftentimes it's not always reflected in value in the return investment that we see from our politicians and elected officials. And it's important to me in this role and in this capacity to make sure that everyone in this sector feel like their work is being valued and their voice is being valued equally. So I'm hoping through this role, I get to do that, and that you all join me along the way. Emily, if you could go to the next slide for me, please. One thing that I'm really excited to do is learn a little bit more about the sector and the different issues that are impacting you all at your different organization as creative members. I know that there are always those huge issues that are like right in our faces, such as housing displacement, artist displacement, and as well as funding. And Mass Creative we have legislation in the process. We have our goals. We have these things that we already are starting to implement to ensure that we're tackling these. But there are also like micro issues that we don't quite know about. And I'm excited to connect with all of you one-on-one to learn what those issues are and how we can together work on resolving them. Especially if you are a member of the creative sector from out of Boston. Like I said, I'm a diehard Bostonian. I know how to connect with everybody in the Boston area, but I would love to be a part of your advocacy role outside of Boston, whether you are in the Berkshires, you are in the North Shore. Like I want you to know that Team Mass Creative have your back, and that where you want us to be, we will show up for you. And I'm hoping through our advocacy effort, we have that solidarity and comfort in one another. And another thing too is like creating more space for artists, as I've been saying. I feel like oftentimes when people think about where the creative sector exists, like everyone always like gravitate toward Boston. But as someone who have been in New Bedford, I know that there's a beautiful art scene in New Bedford as well. We often talk about the Cape in the beautiful sector that exists out there in the Cape as well. But there are other like smaller little towns and like awesome artists who are doing great things. And we want to make sure we create the space and the platform for them to be able to do that work and to be recognized as well. And I'm hoping through our advocacy effort and some of the things that we have going on, everyone feel a sense of seen and value. And of course, if you ever seen any candidates who run for anything, if you ever met a political organizer, you know the most important thing for us and the things that bring us joy is to be in community with everyone, which I am so excited about. Whether it's an art show you want to invite Team Mass Creative to, a play that you're putting on, a poetry night. I love poetry. So anybody who's here who do poetry or have poetry nights happening that you want to invite us to, you automatically have, you win the key to my heart because I love poetry. So invite us to everything. We want to be in community with you. We want to be able to celebrate your work. We want to be present. So I'm hoping that everybody have the opportunity we're hoping to be a part of everyone's work and to show up for you all. So please do feel comfortable to invite us to be a part of your work and to be in community with you. And the last part, and which is the most exciting thing that I get to announce today, Team Mass Creative is going to be putting on a 4-part training series where we get to teach everyone how to do the work that I do. I think everybody has a voice. Like I often meet a lot of politicians that says, I'm running because I want to be the voice for everyone in my community who's often feel like they don't have a voice. I don't believe in such a thing. I believe everybody has a voice. Whether someone is signing to you, they are writing it, they're texting expressing it to you, that is them vocalizing themselves. It matters to me that I make space for everybody's voice to be able to be in the conversation. So I am putting on we are putting on a 4-part training series where we get to dissect what kind of activist does everybody want to be. Like, how do you identify yourself in this work, in how you advocate for your community, how you advocate for yourself, your work, your family. We want to know, and based on how the kind of activist that you perceive yourself to be, how can that activism be translated into the work that we do here in the creative sector? We also want to learn, like, how can we help you create the lasting sustainable impact that you want to see in your community and you want to see in your everyday life. So through this training, I have some amazing organizers and activists and people in the community who have been doing the work for a while, who would like to come in and connect with you all and help you guys out. So this training we're going to be announcing the training dates very, very soon. But we hope that we have a lot of folks who are interested in it. In the follow-up email that we're going to send about this meeting, we are going to have a link for you to sign up, so that way we could fill out the form letting us know you're interested. It is never too late for anybody to make space for your voices to be heard and for us to be a unifying front. I talk to Emily about this all the time. Like, the sector is so unified and strong right now. There's space for us within this new administration, government administration, for us to continue to get a little bit more of the equity that we're seeking. So I hope you all are able to join us for the training. If you have any more questions about it, I am more than happy to connect with you offline. Thank you so much again to everyone who is here today and who have made the space, the time this morning. We greatly appreciate it. I'm going to be logging off because my background is a little loud, but thank you again, everybody, for being here. And I look forward to reconnecting with you all very soon.
Thanks, Richleen. Richleen just really impressed me with her energy and with her spirit of just believing that everyone has a voice and everyone can be an advocate and an activist. So we're going to hold that 4-part training in April, and so be on the lookout for that. Again, we're gonna share some links today, but we're also going to send out sort of a wrap-up email that will include that'll just be chock full of resources. So don't you worry. So we are having a few pieces of technical difficulty. So Kelsey just got kicked off of the Zoom, so she's going to be joining us in a minute. In the meantime, I'm going to move on to my section. Just give me a moment. I'll get us there. Great. Okay. I want to start with just a little bit of a place setting, right? Because as I mentioned at the beginning of this Zoom, we have gone through some really intense advocacy work together over the last 3 years. And I want us to just talk about that, right? So, Mass Creative has been around for about a decade now. Many of you on this call have been parts of arts and cultural advocacy in Massachusetts for a lot longer than that. But there are a couple of things that have been really sort of fantastic that we've done together that I just want to sort of clock here. So first is that we reversed a really dangerous trend in state funding for the arts. In 2010, the Mass Cultural state allocation was at about $9.6 million. And spoilers for another slide in the deck, the governor of Massachusetts on Wednesday just released her budget proposal, and it's for $25 million for the arts and cultural sector. So that is a phenomenal shift in the direction of funding for arts and culture. We also worked together over the years to make sure that there was funding for our cultural spaces through the Cultural Facilities Fund. And then more recently, we all worked really hard to educate our elected officials for when they were making decisions about how they were going to spend surplus dollars and federal dollars for COVID recovery. And all told, it was about $145 million that went into the arts and cultural sector. And it's broken down that way. And so that's a lot of work. And many of you joined me in November and December when we held a series of focus groups across the Commonwealth and participated in the survey where we asked you like basically two questions. One was, what are your top challenges right now, right? Like things are so different now than they were 3 years ago. The way we do our work is different. Our concerns, a lot of them have shifted. And then of those top challenges, what are some solutions that you feel will meet your needs, you are excited about advocating for, and are relevant to your communities? And so I'll tell you, let me show you what y'all told us. So here's a lovely little bar graph that tells, here are the top challenges that the creative sector of Massachusetts currently feels they're facing. So you can see on the far left, everyone agrees that there is not enough public funding for arts and culture in Massachusetts. And so that's everybody's in agreement about that. The next one that's really interesting is that there's an agreement that the distribution of those public funds is inequitable. And when we asked folks to sort of unpack what that meant, it definitely was along creative disciplines, along cultures, as well as specific communities that have historically not been at the table when funding decisions have been made, and as well as geography, right? And so, already we're seeing a shift in how those dollars, the main agency that distributes those dollars, the Mass Cultural Council, we're seeing a shift in how they are distributing public funds. And I think we'll just continue to see that. And we are here to continue to have that conversation. These three here, the workforce development, the artist displacement, and the loss of creative space, sort of sit as a whole, right? Because they're all sort of part of one another, right? If there's not enough workforce for your organizations because people don't feel like they can stay and live and do their work in the communities where your organizations are. Artists are being displaced because of a lot of issues that are facing many people, residents of the Commonwealth, including the price of housing just continues to skyrocket, as well as spaces to make, rehearse, dream, and collaborate together are disappearing at a precipitous rate. Folks also felt very strongly, particularly in the focus groups, that there needs to be more support and more access to arts education and creative youth development. And then obviously, we recognize that COVID is not over for all of us in terms of both, frankly, the health challenges, as well as many of our organizations and our artists are not seeing audiences return or attendees return in the numbers that they did before the pandemic. So using this data and using the question of what would be relevant solutions, Mass Creative has put together some policy priorities. And I want to sort of share with you how we sort of are guiding these policy priorities. So the first guiding value is about equity and inclusion. For us, it's not enough to think just about getting more dollars, but thinking about how those dollars are being distributed, thinking about how every single policy that we might endorse or work on will touch the greatest number of folks and will work to challenge inequities in our sector and inequities in our society. And that we center and spend time with folks who are often left out of the decision-making process when we develop policy and when we advocate for it. Then we have our sort of 4 pillars of our work, right? At the top, no surprise here, is a top pillar is about public investment in creative and cultural communities, right? And for us, that really, that's part of that equity and inclusion conversation, right? Because public dollars, unlike personal individual donations or private foundations or corporate sponsorship, public dollars have a level of transparency and a level of engagement and buy-in from all of us that makes it so that the agenda is about more art and more equitable art. It's not about what I, as an individual donor, might feel is most relevant to me as a cis straight white woman in Massachusetts. And it's not about what, if I'm a corporation, what's going to get the biggest eyes on my logo, right? And so that's why for Mass Creative, public investment in arts and culture is a priority for us. The next one is about the creative economy. You know, for us, we really saw during the pandemic that our ecology includes individual creative workers, artists, cultural nonprofits, creative small businesses, and that entire creative economy is necessary for a really healthy arts and cultural ecosystem. And so that's where we're starting to look in terms of when we're thinking about the policy work that we're doing. Next, it is very clear that arts and cultural spaces are both at risk, and we need to make sure that they are accessible and inclusive, both by the formal definitions as well as that they bring more spirit of belonging into them and make sure that folks feel welcome, right? And then youth and arts, right? This is something that especially in the survey, a lot of people sort of saw this thread, this logic thread of that if we, first of all, that there are so many benefits that young people receive when they engage in creative expression and they connect through arts and culture. But more importantly, that when folks have a experience and a connection to art and culture and to creative expression at an early age, that pulls them through as they grow up and become art supporters. So a little bit for us, that's also about our public will building for more support for arts, and that we need to be engaging people at the beginning and making sure that everyone has access so that we can continue to, frankly, build more advocates and more supporters for our work. So how did this land? So what this means is that we spent a lot of time, particularly in December and January, thinking about these policy pillars, thinking about the challenges that you all shared with us. And we worked with legislators. Some of their staff are on the call today. I just want to call out and recognize staff from Rep. Keefe's office, as well as from Senator Oliveira's office, that filed bills that will address a lot of these challenges. And really quickly, in January of this year, we started a new legislative session. In Massachusetts, we got a 2-year legislative session. So in January, all of our new lawmakers and re-elected lawmakers were sworn in. We inaugurated our first female LGBTQIA+ elected governor in Massachusetts, which was really exciting. And they also the legislators all had to file bills, right? And those bills are going to be considered over the next 2 years. And so that's the other thing. And then the third thing that happened was committee chairs were appointed. And so many of you know that for the last several years, we've worked with Chair Carol Fayola from New Bedford on the House side and Chair Ed Kennedy from Lowell on the Senate side. Both were incredible champions and partners with the creative sector during the pandemic, working tirelessly to make sure that our issues were elevated in the building and helping us navigate the advocacy process. They have both been appointed to chair different committees this session. And we're really lucky that we have 2 new chairs who have deep knowledge about the arts and cultural community. So on the Senate side, we have Chair Paul Mark, and then on the House side, we have Chair Mindy Dome. And I'm really excited that we get to work with these 2 individuals. Richleen and I had a chance to sit down with Chair Mark the other day, and it's just very clear that he understands the impact and the value to communities to have a robust and inclusive and equitable arts and cultural community. And so we're going to be working with them a lot, and you're all going to be working with them a lot. So we worked, as I said, we worked to file these bills, and here they are. So the first bill is addressing the loss of creative space. So we are working with Representative Dan Cahill of Lynn and Senator Liz Miranda of Boston. This bill is it's kind of like a little bit of a mischievous bill in that it's not asking for money, but what it does is it does 2 things. It will create a definition in Massachusetts law for creative space preservation. Right now we have definitions for preservation, for historic preservation, for affordable housing, for conservation. And so we want to make sure that there's a definition for creative space. The other thing that it will do is it will create a mechanism that will allow cities and towns to set up trust funds where they can hold year after year any assets to preserve or construct new creative spaces. So what does this look like? This might look like a developer decides to pay the city a bunch of mitigation money when they want to redevelop as part of their redevelopment agreement, and that mitigation money can go in that trust fund to buy a new building. Or it could look like a donor or a property owner who wants to make sure that their property that has been used for creative space continues to be so, and they work a deal where they either sell or they transfer the ownership of that building to the city or the town, and that would be held in that trust fund. These are sort of, again, really technical tools, but really important in laying the groundwork for what we hope is even more legislation to make sure that there are more spaces that are preserved and are created for artists and creatives to make their work, to showcase their work, okay? The next bill that we have is an act improving accessibility in the creative economy. So I just want to shout out Open Door Arts and their managing director, Nicole Gallegos, who in partnership with the Mass Cultural Council released a report at the end of last year talking about accessibility for the disability community in arts and cultural spaces. And one of the findings is that many arts and cultural spaces would like to be more accessible, have the recommendations to implement greater inclusion strategies that could be both literal marketing materials or signage or other sort of physical pieces, but also it could be about staff so that are focused on this work, but they don't have the resources to do that. And so this bill would create a fund that would be administrated by the Office of Disability and in consultation with the Mass Cultural Council to do just that, and that arts and cultural organizations and creative businesses could apply to use those funds to make their spaces more accessible. We are working with Rep. Dan Donahue from Worcester and Senator Paul Mark from the Berkshires on that bill. Next up, we have a program to create more cultural equity in tourism promotion. So, we have an amazingly marketable state when it comes to tourism, right? So if you're in the Berkshires, you know that that's a tourist destination, as well as the Cape, as well as Boston, and the North Shore. But oftentimes there are amazing cultural gems and arts organizations that are could become draws for local and regional tourism, but don't have the resources to promote themselves as such. And so this bill would create a fund that would be administrated by the Mass Office of Tourism and Travel in consultation with the Mass Cultural Council that would do just that. And it would pay for things like marketing materials, tourism brochures, websites, other, participating in trade show communications to the tourism industry, to make sure that when we are talking about visiting Massachusetts, we are talking specifically about visiting all of Massachusetts and a more diverse Massachusetts. So we are working with Representative Pat Duffy of Holyoke and Senator Jake Oliveira of Hampden County. And moving on, we have an act to promote downtown vitality. And we're really excited that we're actually working with the Gateway Cities Initiative and Mass Inc., as well as a number of other coalition partners on this bill. So it has been sponsored by Representative Cabral and Senator Cronin. And what it would do is it would take 5% of sales tax that's collected from online sales from things that are purchased in Massachusetts, and it would create a fund that would that cultural districts, Main Street associations, business improvement districts, and parking benefit districts in gateway cities and other low-income communities could use to pay for their staff, to make to implement more strategies, to draw people downtown, to coordinate main streets, and make sure that the economic vibrancy of in-person experiences isn't lost. We feel like this is just a perfect piece of our work, and is again about how arts and culture is a draw to main streets and downtowns, but needs investment, especially through some of these different organizations that really help to bring people to main streets. So, and then finally, this is really exciting. So I think many of you know for the last couple of years that we have worked on the Massachusetts Public Art Program, which was our Percent for Public Art bill. Well, we got a lot of really good feedback last session on what would make the bill more advantageous and more successful. We also really thought about how public art is a strategy about connecting communities, and that when public art comes to communities, it needs to reflect and represent those communities. So this still is a Percent for Public Art bill that would draw money from Commonwealth-owned construction projects, as well as any money that the Commonwealth allocates for construction projects in general, at a certain level, at a certain threshold, and it would put it into a fund for public art. But it would also require that when the Public Art Commission is thinking about commissioning public art, that it work really closely with communities where that public art would be. It would be administrated by the Department of Community Development, which is part of housing and economic development right now. And the reason for that is, again, this piece about how public art is part of community development. It's about connecting us, reflecting our values, and it needs to sort of live in those strategies. The other thing that's really exciting is that for a number of years, many of you have reached out to us and said, we want to commission more, our downtown wants to commission public art, but we're caught up in a lot of rules about how we can commission it. We want to be able to pay or subsidize artists who are participating in an RFQ or an RFP, but our city offices are saying we can't. And so this bill also includes language that would codify the process for commissioning public art to make it easier for cities and towns to bring more art into their spaces. Okay, so I'm going to stop here. I know that was a little bit of a whirlwind, but I want to check in with folks and see if there are any questions. And Nicole, hey, how's it going? I love that you're answering the questions for us. Love it. Okay. All right. I'm not seeing any questions at this time. I'm so impressed that we're so clear in our explanations. If that's not the case, that's cool too. Tommy?
Yes, Emily. One of the main reasons I decided to attend today has to do with, I know there was funding from the CARES Act, but during the pandemic, my organization got funding from an economic development disaster loan, which now is coming due. And the SBA seems to be pretty rigorous. It has to be paid back. I was wondering if there was any advocacy around it, because it was the way it kept our concert series afloat. And we did like 8 during 2020, which was pandemic year, after Charlie lifted the embargo. Got it.
Listen, Tommy, I don't know that I could directly answer that question. I'll follow up with you and we'll also post a response to that. My understanding is that a lot of those federal programs that were stood up during the pandemic did have ways for forgiveness for them. And so
let's follow up later.
Yeah, I'll talk with some colleagues about that. Don asks,
I was actually gonna answer Toki's question really quickly
Oh,
because I
please.
see his first. I think that's a really great question, Toki, because like I said in my introduction, like our work is only like solidified and is we able to do what we do on the back end of you guys' support. So we do have some ways that you guys can support these legislation by either like calling your legislators and letting them know that you support these bills and would like to see them co-sponsor the bills. But also we have we know the importance of like sending them an email as well, like letting them know, hi, I'm Toki, I'm from this I'm in the creative sector, and these legislations are have been filed on behalf of me, and I would love to see you support it and co-sponsor it. We have the language ready for you all, and we definitely will be sending that out as well. So that way, all of you guys can get in contact with your representative and let them know what's happening from Mass Creative and how you would like them to support our initiative. But that I see Kelsey hand up, but that will be included in the follow-up email as well. So we can connect offline if there's any further question in regards to that.
Okay. Thanks. And then Don, would 5% of online purchases be available for cultural district planning? Yeah, I think the idea is right, is like it's available for these various entities in gateway cities and other low-income communities to attract, to coordinate downtown and Main Street activity and attract more folks. Sumina is asking a really great question. Hello, Sumina, good to see you. We are recording this. We will be posting it on YouTube. We will be following up to make sure that everyone's got it. And we are really, really thankful for Senator Oliveira's filing and support on these bills. And then also, side note, Senator Oliveira is the vice chair of the Tourism, Arts and Cultural Development Committee. So we have another really great champion in Senator Oliveira working with us this session. Kelsey, did you still have a question? Also, welcome back, Kelsey. We missed you.
I wanted to elaborate on Richlene's comment about how people can support these bills. Also, hello, everyone. I'm sorry that my Wi-Fi gave out. It's still out, so I'll do my best by phone. I think there are many people in my life, and maybe some of you who can relate to this, who would get a kick out of the fact that I was on time and still very late. But anyways, so just to add on to what Richleen was saying about how you can use your voices to support these bills and express your support for these bills, the time will come when these bills are up for hearings, and you will have the opportunity then to be able to testify for 3 minutes or less and explain your stories and explain why these bills would have a meaningful impact in your work and your lives. So when that time comes, we will communicate with you how to testify, how to register to testify, and what to do there. The other thing you can do, and unfortunately, because my Wi-Fi kicked me off, I'm not sure if this was shared with you already, but you can use our social media graphics to share on your own social media platforms information about these bills and amplify the word there. You can also use, again, your personal stories to explain why these bills would be meaningful to you. But if you sit on an arts and culture organization board, or you know people who do, or you're just working within your own networks, and make sure to spread the word about these bills and encourage others to also use their voices, that will go a long way to inch these bills along. And as time goes on, we are currently developing comprehensive fact sheets for each of the bills and other tools that you'll have at the ready to be able to talk just very confidently about what these bills contain.
So this is like the greatest segue I could have ever asked for. So I'm going to share my screen again, because we actually have some of these resources like ready to go, and we're going to populate your chat with them. So, and I want to just talk for a brief second about like what comes next, right? So the bills, in the life cycle of a bill has to get filed. The next thing that really counts is getting as many co-sponsors as we can for these bills. Co-sponsors, which is when a state rep or state senator says, yes, I support this bill, signals that within the legislature, there's a lot of interest in seeing this bill move forward. So it is a little bit of a numbers game, a game we have all played before. We do it every year if we have a budget amendment we ask for co-sponsors. And this year we've created a couple of other resources. So both Richleen and Kelsey have talked about that, a number of these already, but and Kelsey and Richleen, if it's possible to share, we have some links. So we created a phone. So first of all, I've got the power of a phone call, the thrill of an action email, the momentum of your networks. And these are in a specific order for a reason. So the power of a phone call. We've got legislative staff on this call who know the difference between somebody picking up the phone to say, hey, I'm a constituent. Thank you for your work and leadership in terms of our district. I want to talk to you about a bill that I'm really passionate about, and ask you to join me in that passion. That's a impactful moment. A little lower down on that list is an email, right? Like our inboxes are flooded every single day, right? And we're like constantly, well, I'm making some assumptions. I'm constantly triaging my emails. So it's easy to miss an email. It's harder to miss a phone call, but emails still count, right? And so that's a tried and true technique that we've all used, and it's one we're going to continue to use. And then this last one is a little bit about the ripple effect, right? So if you call your legislator or email your legislator in support of a bill, that's one person. But if you do those things, and then you say to just 3 or 5 people in your network, in your office, in your collective, your creative collective, hey, this is happening and we need to make sure more people are talking about it. If you get them to call, that is that ripple effect. And for a lot of you on the call who are working in working in arts and cultural organizations, you have 2 other really valuable groups to be part of that momentum. One is, actually 3, you have your whole staff, right? So many of you on this call are representing an arts organization, and you're going to go back to your organization and say, hey, here are the 3 things that Mass Creative shared with me today. Here are the 2 things that I think we can get done together as a group. So that's important. The other one that really is meaningful is many of you are nonprofit organizations and you have a board of directors, or you have a core of volunteers. Imagine what it would look like if every single one of your board members signed on and shared their support of these bills. And finally, so many of us serve communities, right? We have email lists, we have social media channels. As Kelsey said, we have all of these different ways to reach out to people who trust you to share with them the things that are most important. And we can't do our work if we don't work in coalition. So we really encourage you to think about these 3 different calls to action around co-sponsors. So we created a phone script for you that includes a little bit of like a pep talk before you get on the call, some talking points you can use, and then some follow-up you can do afterwards. We also created an action alert email that you fill in your information and it'll immediately send a note to both your state rep and your state senator saying, these are the bills that I support as a member of the creative community, and I really hope you'll consider co-sponsoring. And then, as we said, we've got some social media graphics that talk about these bills that you can use, and we'll continue to share those out. So we can start today. Like we actually should have started yesterday, but we're starting today together. And so that's the first wave of advocacy strategy we're going to do together. All right, so now I'm going to turn our attention to the fiscal year 24 budget. So many of you have been part of our collective community advocacy around the annual state budget. And while every legislative session is 2 years, we get 2 budgets in those years. So we work on a single fiscal year. July to June is the fiscal year. And so we've actually just started the budget process. So here's my handy dandy. If some of you were on the calls before, I had a much more complicated flow chart of how the budget process works. I've narrowed it down a little bit, but here we are, right? So With the exception of the governor's first year in office, they're expected to file their budget proposal in January. Governor Healey and Lieutenant Governor Driscoll filed theirs just the other day on March 1st. And so that's the beginning. That's like the kickoff call for the budget process. Next, the Ways and Means Committee, the Joint Committee, which includes House and Senate members, will hold a series of hearings across the Commonwealth. They're going to hear from every government agency, all of the secretaries, about their priorities and their budget requests. The Mass Cultural Council will testify at one of these hearings and share their formal request for their agency. Both Senate and the House Ways and Means committees will take this into account, and the House will start next, and the House Ways and Means Committee will share their version of the budget, right? And as you know, they'll share their version. Every member of the House will have an opportunity to file amendments to say, that's really great, but I want to see this included, or I want to add money into this line item. And they will negotiate down to a final version for the House budget. It'll then move over to the Senate. That process will be repeated with Senate Ways and Means giving a proposal, senators having an opportunity to offer amendments, negotiating down to a single version. And then members of both the House and the Senate will go into conference committee and they will negotiate the differences of those two different versions and come up with a compromise version that hopefully gets passed in short order out of the legislature, and it'll arrive on the governor's desk. And technically it's supposed to get there at the beginning of July, but life happens, things happen. And so the governor then has a chance to review it. She will be able to sign it into law. She'll be able to veto the whole thing, or she'll be able to do line item vetoes, which means she goes in and says, nope, I don't want to do that, or I want to change the language here for one reason or another. If she does a veto or line item vetoes, it goes back to the legislature and they have the opportunity to override if they have enough time. But that's how, this is the process, and we're going to be in it with you for the next couple of months. But we are like in the greatest position we could be, which is for the first time ever. And I'm sort of jumping the lead here. The governor of Massachusetts has recommended a record high amount for the Mass Cultural Council's budget. And so it's an overall, it's a $55 billion budget package. And I've pulled out a couple of things that I thought would be of interest to us as the creative sector. So $25 million for the Arts and Cultural Council, $7.4 million for the Massachusetts Office of Tourism and Travel. Then there's also going to be $6.58 billion for Chapter 70 school aid. This is an important part of making sure that every child in public schools in Massachusetts has a quality education, and that we believe should include arts education. This is also a fulfillment of the Student Opportunity Act that was signed into law by Governor Baker in 2019, and that Governor Healey is making good on. So this is an exciting moment to see that funding move forward. And then the other thing that Governor Healey included in her budget was a series of tax package. And there's two here that, again, I think are relevant to the creative community. The first one is that she included a live theater tax credit, which would provide tax credits, which are different than tax deductions. And there's a lot of reasons why they're different that we can get into at another time. But it would provide a tax credit for commercial theater performances that are either pre-Broadway tryouts, pre-off-Broadway tryouts, or launches of national tours, or regional commercial theatrical productions, right? And so there's a lot of folks on this call who have been supportive of that. And so we want to clock that is part of the governor's package. The other one is a family and child tax credit that would provide, I think it's a $600 tax credit for anyone who has a dependent, and that dependent can be a child. It can also be an elder, a person you care for who's elderly. And so this is I think a thing that many of us in the creative sector as humans would benefit from. Okay, so that's the tax package. So I just want to put the state where her recommendation from the Mass Cultural Council sort of fits in context. So here we have in blue what each year of the governor's recommendations have been for the Mass Cultural Council budget. So you can see it's pretty. If we did a trend line, it only sort of goes up in the last year, right? In that fiscal year 23. You can also see where the final budget that's agreed upon by both the legislature and the governor ended up in each one of these years. And again, we had a couple of flat years. We jumped a little bit, kind of plateaued, and we've seen some increases in the last 2 years. This is more than any of these final budget numbers. It's actually 11% more, 11% increase from last year's final budget. And it's a 23% increase from Governor Baker's recommendation last year. I think this is a really important moment to just pause and talk about what it means to have a vocal supporter of arts and culture in the executive branch, right? Like, this is a shift, and we need to clock this because this is an opportunity, right? And it's also a time where we can give thanks, right? I think oftentimes we only ask our elected officials for things or tell them when we don't like something that they've done. And this is an opportunity where we can say to Governor Healey and Lieutenant Governor Driscoll, this is important and we noticed it. So we've stood up a action alert email where you can just send a quick little note of thanks to Governor Healey and Lieutenant Governor Driscoll for this increase. And at the same time, because I said we are at the beginning of the process, right? About almost 600 of you signed on to a letter that we submitted to Governor Healey, expressing our overall goal of hitting a $5 per capita for arts spending in Massachusetts. That would be about $35 million. So 25 isn't 35 million, but it's sure the heck closer to it than it was in the past. So we also want to send another letter to leadership in the legislature to say, we are really excited to see what Governor Healey has included. We fully support 25 million. This is an important step towards our long-term goal of $5 per capita per resident in Massachusetts for arts, culture, and creativity. So there's also an opportunity for you to sign on to that letter. We're going to keep it open until Friday, February 9th, so a week from today. And this is another ripple effect opportunity.